from what you said about psychology, like there's a lot of variability, and so in my head at that time when you were talking about it, I was wondering why people study psychology in the first place.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so like for you, what do you think of that?
Oh, why, that's, well, I mean, in the end, to understand people, and thereby to help them, you know, it's kind of like the noble goal, but then of course there's the less noble goal of if I understand people, I can control them, right? So a little of both, like you know, like it's really good to understand, like, you know, what in me triggers hunger so that I can lose weight, but it's also good for McDonald's to know what, you know, triggers hunger in me, so they can sell me a Big Mac. Yeah. So, you know, it kind of goes both ways, right? And then if me and McDonald's both know how to control my hunger, then it becomes like an arms race. Like they're trying to push some stimuli on me that I'm trying to avoid, so I don't have Big Macs, right? So
you're gonna go Pavlov experiment on you.
Exactly. Well, I mean, there are things like they are red and yellow because that induces hunger, and stuff like that, and they will, you know, make their you know, the smell of the grease and the French fries come out of their building so that you smell it and go in and stuff like that. Like, yeah, that's all. And you know, they probably do some associative learning with you too. Like when you're in the restaurant, like you're seeing their symbols and their logos and you're smelling their food, and then when you're out and you see their symbols and their logos, it's gonna at least, you know, you may not smell the French fries, but your brain kind of does a little bit.
Like it associates it with
and then it craves them something.
Red and yellow.
So, yeah. So there are two forces here that use psychology, for sure, and of course, you know, the political realm does a ton of it too. You know, fear is a great motivator, and a lot of people use a lot of fear to try to motivate you to vote a certain way or think a certain way. I think we know that's really true lately, but it has historically been to, like, you know, propaganda and stuff like that has been around forever, and so, but the ideal, and hopefully the role of most academics in psychology is to understand our brains, our patterns, how we respond to certain sensations and things like that as predictably as possible, so that we can help people become better humans to each other, to themselves, have more fulfilling lives, be more productive members of a better society, and all that really noble stuff. That's the larger hope.
Yeah, because that's also like the reason why I got into psychology as well. Because I want to work with people later on, whether it's in like HR or advertising. Like I want to be on the McDonald's side.
On the bad side.
Yeah. But if we're both aware, then you know we can engage in the arms race, like you said. But it's interesting because I feel like
Sith to my Jedi later.
Yeah.
You better hope I don't get the high ground. You're in trouble.
Yeah, we'll see about that after you smell my double cheeseburger.
Like I don't know everything that's going to trigger me to want a Big Mac, right? But if I can eliminate from my life, if I know half of the things, and I can eliminate them, I'll still eat half as many Big Macs, and I'll be twice as healthy for it, right? And maybe twice as healthy is not quite right, but I'll do half as much damage to my health because I've eaten half as many, right? So even if it doesn't work perfectly, like, you know, one of the things I learned I think this is in my postdoc, it was late in grad school, early in postdoc, someone told me, and I had never heard this before, to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, which means, like, don't let not being perfect stand in your way of doing something that's good, right? Like, don't wait for it to be perfect. Do it when it's good and helpful, and maybe you'll get to perfect someday, but it doesn't matter. You know, like, so let's say, like, I I'm injured and I can't exercise exactly the way I'd want to. Like I want to run a marathon, but I can't. I can only walk around the block. If I start walking around the block, that's still good. If I sat and said, well, it's not perfect, I can't run a marathon yet, and didn't start and try, then I would never get there, and I wouldn't do anything good for myself, right? So I don't think we'll ever get to the perfect in psychology. There's just too many variables. But we'll progress. We'll get from, 10% known and useful to 20 and 30 and 40 and 50% of the variables known and useful, right? So, yeah. And the person telling me this was like because I was taking forever to write a paper, because I wanted it to be perfect. I didn't want to put it out there until it was perfect. But they're like, yeah, but if you spend 3 years writing one paper that's perfect, wouldn't it be better to like write 3 papers that were like really good in the same time? I was like, oh, yeah, actually. Get 3 times the ideas out there. And yeah, maybe there's a couple typos, but 3 times the ideas out there, it's better. Right. So, I mean, you don't want to put crap out in the world, but
Yeah.
like, don't like that's not supposed to be an excuse to be lazy, but to just not hesitate.
Yeah. I feel like that like relates to me deeply, like this constant of like, oh, I want it, I'm not gonna do it until it's like perfect, or I'm not gonna present it.
Yeah.
Or actually start something until I think I'm good at it.
Yeah.
So I guess it's like analogous to like, oh, psychology, like you said, is never gonna be perfect, but we could always improve on the sandcastle.
Yeah, exactly. We can pack that sand down firmer and firmer, right? So that the castle stands for longer and can be built taller.
Yeah.
And if we occasionally have to knock one down and start over again, that's okay too.
Yeah. I think the goal of science isn't to actually build like a strong castle and like, oh wow, beautiful castle, and just move on to the next castle. Like,
and you can also build a dozen and see which one stands best. Right? That happens a lot too. There's going to be a bunch of theories out there, and you see which one stands the test of time. Stands up to scientific rigor and fits new data the best. And then some of them get washed out, and eventually you just have 2 or 3 or maybe even one standing.
Yeah, literally and figuratively.
Yeah,
standing the test of time.
Humans will try to kick your castle. Every reviewer, every person who's going to read your work and criticize it is going to take shots at your castle, and it's hard not to take personally because you put a lot of your time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears into making that castle. But in the end, hopefully and ideally, they're doing it to make it a stronger castle in the end. Not necessarily to take it down, but to find weaknesses so you can patch them up, and make it stronger in the end.
And that's okay.
It's a hard process.
Rebuild.
Oh yeah, always okay to rebuild.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the second you stop, being self-analytical and self-critical and trying to make your own thoughts clearer and firmer and gather more data to support your hypothesis, you've gone stagnant. You're not really contributing anymore. So yeah, you always have to continue to be just as hard on yourself as everyone else.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's okay to take hits and rebuild.
Yeah.
It's good.
Even if it's a variability complete that changes your study completely because of a person that might be completely different.
Yeah.
I guess that could also be an opportunity to look at another castle.
Oh my gosh, I never looked at it from that perspective before.
Yeah.
Why did this person do that? Oh, because they had this history. And there's these variables there that I didn't even think would relate to my topic, but they do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I guess then you can add another.
And you can add something, and you can hire a new postdoc and branch off. I don't know. But yeah, it's a hard process. It takes a thick skin. I won't lie.
Yeah.
It's if you're gonna be in the industry world, it's not as critical but more cutthroat. There's more competition among colleagues. But it's a hard process in the academic route. There's a lot of people are going to challenge your thinking.
hard. So
Yeah.
how would you define like a harder task? Because obviously like a psych major would have to deal with different battles than like say an engineering major would.
Right.
And
Well, I mean,
so you see, even when society like I guess it ties into how like with psych major when they graduate, people say like, oh, you won't get as much pay if you work in this industry with that.
that could definitely be. I don't know.
wrong.
I didn't go that route, so I went the academic route, which basically means I didn't care about how much I got paid. Like, this is not something that you do for money. But in terms of like what's harder and what, like, I mean, really, what would be the hardest for me would be to like if I had to be out in like the sun all day and like I don't know, build houses or something. Like I couldn't do that. My body's not built for that. Like, that's impossible. Or if I had to like be creative on the spot every day or something like that. Like I think of myself as a creative person, but I can't just like, turn it on. That's like inspiration has to hit. Yeah. Some people like, you know, like tattoo artists or graphic designers or people that like they get a job, they have to produce an artwork. I don't know how they do that. It's crazy. That would be impossible for me. I couldn't do it. So like really people should like, you know, so like, you know, is engineering harder than psychology? Engineering would be harder for a psychologist to do than psychology is. But I would think to some level psychology would be harder for an engineer to do than engineering is. Because people should kind of go where their strengths lie. Right? If you see the world structurally, physically, in an engineering kind of way, like you see the angles of this room and you understand like how the loads are born of those books on these shelves and stuff, if that's the way your mind views the world, then engineering is probably not that hard for you. It's intuitive, right? If instead, but engineers notoriously aren't very good at relating to people. And if you see the world as people, and I ignore all the junk around me as is evident because it's a mess, but I see the person in front of me and I'm thinking about you and what best to say to you and stuff like that. Like that's why teaching is good for me, right? Because that's how I interact with the world. Like I interact with people in my daily life. Sometimes I feel like I'm too like, I don't know, mentor-ish or like fatherly or something to random strangers, like because like they don't necessarily want my advice like a student in my office does. Yeah. A friend at a bar and I'll be talking about a topic and all of a sudden I'll just notice myself that I have like dropped into this like lecturing voice or something like that. Dude, I'm sorry. What am I doing? Yeah.
Do they have like a name for that persona?
I'm not lecturing. No. Yeah. Probably an ass, but you know.
Oh. Yeah.
Like a mansplainer or a blowhard or something. I don't know. Whatever I am, but like. I don't know, like not even that. Like I just think about like people and what they're going through all the time. So like if I'm just out somewhere, I will just, if I'm at that same bar, if I'm by myself, I might like see the bartender struggling with something and be like, oh man, I understand that kind of sucks and something like that. And I'll kind of like, I'll commiserate with them and they'll be like, yeah, you know what, yeah. And then, like we'll just share a moment there of like, you know, and in like the same way I see a student, you know, clearly been up till like 4 a.m. working on an exam and be like, yep, I remember what that was like, you know?
Right.
It's kind of the same thing. So, like, I don't know. It's just, but that's how I see the world. I look at people. So, of course, psychology. Makes sense. Mm-hmm. But if I saw angles and load-bearing walls, I'd be an engineer.
Yeah. So you play to your strengths.
Yeah. Exactly. If I tried to figure that out with all this nonsense going on here, I couldn't. That would be really hard. So that's why I'm not an engineer.